Well, Michelle, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me again. This is going to be great.
I had enjoyed my conversation with you so much the first time. I was like, we need to find a way to do more stuff
I
together. And
know, I'm loving that.
isn't that fun? And on the conversations that were not recorded, we talked about how, when people get sober, we change and it affects all of our relationships. And, the end result, the thing that everybody really wants is to have peaceful and loving relationships. And as we were discussing, how do we make that happen? Or what are the tools? What are the techniques? Like, what do we do to change? And you mentioned that you have this presentation that we talk about boundaries, communication, and managing emotions. I was like, that is brilliant. And so why do you
that's where we get into trouble, right?
Right. Lack of boundaries, poor communication, and emotions being like, I was driven by my emotions before I got sober.
Yep,
and
me too.
Let's be honest. I still have not inappropriate emotions, but like my shit gets triggered occasionally.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in our relationships.
Yes. Why do you think that is?
Because the people who mean the most to us tend to trigger stuff from childhood.
Isn't that the truth? I heard Marianne Williamson talk about the purpose of relationship is to allow all our stuff to come up in a safe environment. But man, if you don't have the tools,
right? Like
if we don't learn how, this is why boundaries, I'm so excited to be talking about boundaries, because in my mind, until you are connected with self, like how you really feel and what you really think, prior to recovery, I was in survival mode, which meant disassociation and detachment from my feelings, right? Or not having the ability to be honest about my feelings. So how can I communicate to anyone else if they hurt my feelings, or if, how can I communicate what my needs are if I don't know what they are? Right.
Well, that's why your work with self-esteem is so key, because that is kind of the pre-pillar, right? We have to have a sense of self before we can do this stuff. And even though it kind of happens simultaneously, I think that's so important that you're addressing that.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like it's kind of the foundation for everything. And I'm obsessed with all this subconscious limiting belief stuff. And so that's kind of but listen, we need something practical. I was thinking, it'd be so cool that by the end of this conversation, people listening will be able to walk away with some new information that they can apply immediately to their relationships. So where would you like to start?
So we could start with boundaries.
Okay. Yeah, let's talk about what they are.
So I tend to think that boundaries are more about what we choose to do versus what other people choose to do. And what I mean by that is a boundary, in order to be successful, has to be something you can control. And if I'm asking you to change, I can't control that. But I can control what I'm going to do based on what your behavior is. So if you're drinking too much, if you're not treating me well, if you're yelling at me, really it's up to me to decide, am I going to participate or am I going to remove myself? And that to me is kind of the boundary at the simplest form, is you get to either choose in or choose out.
That is genius. By the way, if you can move your hair back, it's brushing against your the other side. Your beautiful locks. You have amazing hair, but it's brushing against your hair.
Thank you for telling me.
Can I just tell you, I am so codependent. I have gone through entire interviews where I don't say anything and just cringe the whole time.
Oh, I love that you say that though, because that is exactly what recovery is speaking up in the moment. Love that.
Demonstration in real time.
That's
awesome. Right. Okay, but back to the boundaries, because I think it's so easy to forget that we are either opting in or not, right? We're choosing to participate or not. So that's really important.
And I know a lot of people get really afraid when they're thinking of setting boundaries because they're thinking, oh my God, I'm going to hurt somebody. What if this leads to a huge conflict? So there's two easy ways to start. One
Okay.
is you can stay quiet. And what I mean by that is if you're the kind of person that can't say no, and when somebody says, oh, I really need your help, can you help me move this weekend? And you really don't want to, or you're in your church group and they're asking for a volunteer and you feel compelled to say yes, because that's what you've always done, but you really don't have the time, be quiet.
Right.
See if someone else is going to volunteer, take a breath, because you don't have to say yes, Now, the
Right.
other part is if something isn't going your way, remove yourself. Those are two super easy boundaries that are not going to cause confrontation, but they're going to help you realize that, you know what, maybe I need to leave the room because my family members are fighting and I'm about to get dragged into it.
Right. Remove yourself. That is.
I mean, I know it's
Those,
like,
yeah,
it can be
listen,
simple.
yeah, but simple is not necessarily easy, right?
Right. That's true.
Yes. So for instance, the be quiet one, I, does that come from like a need to rescue or what is
Mhm.
that?
It can. I mean, it can definitely be part of the codependent route of I need to respond. I need to help you because if I don't, you're not going to love me.
Mhm.
But ultimately, when you think about the people in your life, if they really love you, they're going to honor that you need to take care of yourself. And if you need to phrase it that way and say, you know what, I'm going to be trying some new things because I need to take better care of myself. I realize I'm not doing a great job of that right now, and I need to preserve my energy. Most people are going to go, oh, I totally get that, because you're making it about you. You're not making it about them. You're being unreasonable. You're asking too much of me, because most people are going to get defensive over that.
For sure. And I heard a friend say, state a hardship and ask for what you need. Like,
Mm,
oh man, I really, the hardship might be, I'm really, struggling to learn how to take care of myself right now, or I'm very,
mhm.
I just don't have the time. I would love to help you, but
Yeah. And sometimes we can even, as an option, to say, let me help you find another solution.
oh, so offering to help without actually doing the actual work that you don't
Yeah.
have the time to do. That's good.
Yeah.
Um,
Because then you feel like you're still being of service.
right. Your microphone is on the other side. There you
Okay.
go. Do you see, see this is a little
I
so
need to
fun.
become more friends with my Yeti and figure that out.
Yeah, it's so funny. Yeah. So it's the fun. You mentioned something about, fear of a conflict,
Hmm. Yeah.
right? I think so. So for those people who need to actually say something, so there's the be
Hmm.
quiet, and then
Right.
there's like, I need to say something,
Hmm.
and I feel like the needing to say something comes when, like, for me, it comes when like my feelings are hurt
Yeah.
and I need to tell somebody, I need to tell them.
Right.
And it's so hard for me sometimes because number one, I'm emotional because my feelings are hurt.
Hmm.
And I don't want to come across as being needy. It's like I have a fear of what they're going to think of me,
Hmm.
like I'm going to look weak or whatever.
Hmm.
But if I don't say something, it just festers. Like I
Right.
stuff it, it festers and turns into resentment. And then sometime in the future, someone will trigger me, and then all my anger and resentment will
Yeah.
just spew
Yeah.
unintentionally. Like that stuff always comes out, it seems like.
Well, that's where the communication comes in.
Okay, perfect. How does that? Yeah, right. We just need to know what the words are.
Right. Because healthy communication is about expressing ourselves without hurting ourselves or others.
Ooh, without hurting ourselves or others. Like we don't
Right.
have to make ourselves wrong.
Right. Because sometimes we can be like, oh my God, I'm the worst person ever. I shouldn't be doing, and then
Oh
we
my God, I'm
literally
so
are the
stupid. I'm
doormat.
so sorry. Yeah.
Yeah,
Go to the, oh my God, I'm such an idiot. I can't believe I did this. I'm so sorry. Could you not hurt my feelings?
exactly. Exactly. So when we think of healthy communication, part of what works is being subjective and sharing your experience. Hey, this is what it felt like to me. Not right, wrong. Because most people, the minute you say, well, you hurt my feelings,
Oh no.
yeah, somebody's going to go, no, I didn't. and then you're off and running in a, attack defend mode. But hey, can I just talk to you about what happened last week? I'm feeling a little upset, right? I'm coming to you with my feelings, but it's my own experience. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. This is how I took what happened, because that's a lot more subjective. And most people are going to go, oh, that's how you took it. And it invites them to say, actually, that's not what I meant.
Right.
And they're going to want to clarify because they don't feel tagged.
Right. Yeah. That is, listen, I learned not to say you, like you made me, like you made me feel.
That's
Ooh,
huge.
that is an invitation for conflict.
Right.
But
messages are huge.
Yeah. Don't start a sentence with you. And you can't be sneaky about it either. You have to be very clear. It can't be like, I did some work and I realized when you said this. Yeah, it's tricky. People like, and the funny thing is when we have to be prepared for the other person to have a feeling about what we're saying.
Right.
Hold a little space. Like they're going to have a feeling, because haven't you seen, because I know you do a lot, you've done a lot of like couples therapy, right?
Right.
And it's like the one person says, well, you hurt my feelings about this. And it's like, well, I hurt your feelings because I was responding to something you said. And then I'm like, well, I just said that because you, and then it goes into this ping pong thing and there's no progress. It's not productive and people leave feeling worse. Right.
Yeah.
So
well, that's the other piece, is that we have to describe the behavior in a neutral way. So when you said just now, when you,
hurt my feelings.
Yeah. When you hurt my feelings, you can actually say that if you have a fact at the end of it. So when you said I was an idiot, that hurt my feelings. If what they said was you're an idiot. So you have to give them back the words that they actually said, because then they're going to not be as defensive, because you're actually not making an assumption or making a judgment about what they said. You're just naming what they said.
Right. You know what I used to grow up with is the denial. Like, I didn't say that.
I know. And that's tough, because that leads into the gaslighting.
Right. Oh my goodness. Okay. So, before we go any further with communication, do you feel like there was anything else you wanted to say around boundaries?
One thing that helped me out a lot, because I had a lot of fear with boundaries, and I still can, depending on the person, is sometimes just owning that and saying, I'm really nervous to talk to you about this, but I'm trying something new. Do you have 5 minutes? I need to share something. So I just own that this is difficult. This is awkward. I don't know how well I'm going to do, but can you talk to me about it? Because that also softens the other person, because they're like, oh, she's having a tough time. So they actually feel empathetic towards us versus us feeling like we have to do it right. Because, this stuff is progress, not perfection. We're not going to get it right and perfect ever. That's not the goal. The goal is to do it. Yeah.
I'm sure you see a lot of, it's just in my orbit right now. I'm aware of people who are like married people who have been struggling in their relationships and separating. And I know it's tough to speak to generalities, but do you feel like boundaries are like at the root of it? Like people are looking to others to fulfill needs that they should be taking care of themselves?
Oh yeah, especially if they're in an unhealthy pattern in their relationship where there's some codependency, there's some unhealthy dependency, then they may be expecting someone else to be doing things for them that they should possibly be doing for themselves.
Yeah, when we were talking just before we started recording, we were like, oh, the trick is really to take care of ourselves first. Right. And in my mind, it's like, how can I communicate my boundaries to somebody else if I'm like disassociated or detached from my own feelings? I'm so outward focused on what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, what, in relation to what it is that I need. It's hard to be objective and be like, wait a minute, I need to connect with self, because I feel like especially marriages, like when they become tense, you kind of go into crisis mode. And a lot of the, listen, I'm not, a licensed therapist like you are, but is it true that when we're in crisis, we tend to default to our survival mode coping skills like disassociation and detachment? Is that true?
Oh, sure. I mean, if we're not using our tools and we're highly triggered, we are going to react in our old patterns because it's just that fast, unless we have a stopgap and we know, okay, I got to take a breath. What's happening to me? Catch that fight or flight response quickly.
It does take practice though, huh?
Oh, it totally does. But the one thing you said that was really interesting, and you can use it to set boundaries, is that feeling that something isn't right. Because if you're not ready to set the boundary, great. Notice the feeling, notice what's uncomfortable, because that feeling is going to give you your boundary. And go do some writing and write out, what is it that's bothering you? What did they say? What did they do? What is that thing? Because that's the start of setting boundaries, is finding what your own discomfort is.
Right. Starting with self, it does take some practice. And
Totally.
and sometimes it's easier to, in a marriage or a committed relationship, sometimes it's hard to take that, to like have a moment of clarity and be like, wait a minute, I'm super triggered right now. I'm not sure that I'm clear on what's happening for me. And like say to your partner, I feel super triggered right now. I'm not sure what's going on.
Yeah.
Let me just step away and get some clarity and come back to you. I'm not trying, it's like, I'm not trying to abandon you in the moment where we're having this conflict, but I also am not clear. So I want to be able to communicate clearly with you.
I love that.
Yeah. Just be like, I don't know what's going on with me right now. How about it? Let me go talk to someone else and I'll come back.
So now we're going into managing emotion.
Oh, really? We're there managing emotions already.
Well,
okay.
From what you're saying, so part of what happens is you noticed in that moment, okay, I'm being triggered.
Yeah.
Part of managing emotions is figuring out what your early warning signs are that you're triggered, whether it's negative thoughts, whether it's your physical body reacting, like heart rate increasing, sweating, getting hot in your face. If you can find one or two telltale signs that you are now getting upset, that's exactly what helped you in that moment. Probably tell your husband, hey, I'm feeling triggered. I can't talk right now. So that's half the battle with managing emotions, is being able to identify them early enough so they don't explode and cause a lot of havoc.
Don't explode. That is I had this gal talk to me about boundaries in the sense of, and I totally related to this, the doormat to dictator.
Yeah.
And like 2 seconds flat or 0.5 seconds. Like I'm this doormat. I don't have a voice. I stuff it. And then I get triggered and explode. And then everything becomes very black and white. I'm like, from now on, I'm never that.
Yeah.
Becomes like this black and white thing. But underneath all that is, I don't want to feel this pain anymore.
Right.
Like I don't, but if I, like you said in the beginning about noticing, removing yourself, or, either speak, speak your truth or be quiet, it's, everybody's a little, I guess it just depends on the situation. But for me, I need to be able to sort of name the feeling.
Definitely.
Name the feeling, talk about it. When have I felt like this before? Man, this is why professionals are like, you're so important, because I need somebody else to help me break it down. What happened before that? What happened before that? Like, when have you felt this before in your past? And when I notice that whenever I'm triggered, which means that my response is disproportionate to the situation, it means it's not about what's actually happening. It's about what I've stuffed.
Right. And what meaning you're assigning to that behavior that isn't actually true, but we think it is. They don't love me.
It is.
They're not respecting me.
I know, right? Can you share that example that you gave me of somebody that, somebody that was late?
Yeah.
I hate
So
people who are late.
I know it used to be a huge pet peeve for me. So
Yeah.
I dated someone for a long time that was late, and I mean chronically late. And
Okay.
I felt so unloved every time they were late because I thought, oh, they don't really care about me. They don't want to be on time.
That was the meaning you assigned.
Yep, that was the meaning. And then I realized one day that I had been waiting my whole childhood for my dad to come home
Oh,
because he was a captain of a cargo ship and, you know, he was gone for 6 months out of the year. So when he was late, my present boyfriend at the time, that's where I went. Like, I can't wait one more time.
right.
But once I realized it was about my dad and not my boyfriend, it kind of loosened because I realized, okay, I'm assigning meaning that has nothing to do with how this person presently cares about me. He's just running late because that's what he does in all areas of his life, not just with me. So it would help me get to what my real emotion was about and have to do some trauma work around that and realize that, you know what? This is his stuff. This isn't my stuff. He's just late and it doesn't mean anything about the relationship.
Right. Yeah. It's so I heard this idea about negativity bias. Like we just naturally assign the worst possible meaning
Uh-huh.
to a situation.
Yeah. Catastrophizing. Yep. That happens a lot. And that has a lot to do with emotions.
Yeah.
Because if
Yeah.
we assume a bad outcome, we are halfway into feeling upset before we even start.
Oh my God. Can you say that again? We are.
So when we have negative emotions, or I'm
Uh-huh.
sorry, negative assumptions,
Negative
right?
assumptions.
And we all have them. We
Right.
have them about ourselves. We have them about other people. We have them about life in general. If we don't catch those, we're halfway to being upset before we even get into a conversation.
Halfway to being upset. And then once we're upset and triggered, we're coming from a place of fear.
Yeah, we're out at that point because we're like, you looked at me the wrong way, I'm out. I'm going to respond right away, not because of what you're doing in the moment, but because I'm already anticipating a negative reaction from you. And you just confirmed that. So I'm going to be all over that, especially if as a kid, we don't get protected. We become mama bear or papa bear to ourselves. And we go, I'm never going to let myself go through that again. So that's where the dictator comes in, right? That person that says, nope.
Yes.
But, you know, that is our way of trying to protect ourselves. It's just too heavy-handed.
It is too heavy-handed. It doesn't really, and because it's not really based in reality.
Right. Well, that's why the goal is always moderation.
Moderation. What do you mean?
Well, so I, as a kid, decided to stuff my feelings, right? That I thought that was a healthier option. But then we have the exploding on the other end, right? So both of those don't work. The goal is in the middle for me to have my feelings early enough that I'm not going to explode. I'm going to have some control over them, but I'm not going to stuff them because I'm too afraid of what you're going to think.
Right. Wow, that is big. That
I
seems
know
really
this
big.
stuff's a lot. It takes time.
It takes time. Yeah, we need to be patient with ourselves as we have these exchanges with the people in our life.
For sure.
So, how does one communicate, like let's say people are like, oh my god, this is amazing, I'm totally on board, I'm going to try to do this. Is there, I mean, I guess nothing, I guess short of sharing this conversation, is there a way for them to communicate with their partner that's like, hey, I came across some information, I want to try this thing. Do you need to get their buy-in, or how do you propose somebody?
You know, I would just start it like the biggest change, and you already said it, was iMessages. If you can come from a place of let me tell you, this is how it felt to me. Can I share a concern? Can we talk about what happened last night? Instead of starting with you, if you start with that can dramatically change the conversation. Because, you know, I mean, you messages get the other person really defensive, and it starts off a chain reaction that is really hard to come back from.
Yeah, I mean, I know from my experience, if someone comes at me with you did this, you did that, yeah, I get super triggered about that, mostly because I feel terribly guilty.
Well, yeah, and it's hurtful. You know, I'm making you the problem versus all I need to do is shift that and say, hey, can I talk to you about what happened? I'm having trouble here. That's going to be a lot more inviting. You're not going to feel attacked, and you're going to go, oh, sure, Michelle, what's wrong? You're going to want to meet with me versus if I make it about you, you're going to go away from me.
Right. Yeah. That's the stating the hardship. It's like, I'm having a really hard time with this. I just need to tell you.
So that's the simplest thing your listeners could do differently, is literally notice how much you lead with a you and start shifting it with the I, because believe me, that alone is going to transform your communication.
Yeah. You know what? The first thing that comes to mind is when I talk to people, it's like, why do I have to do it?
I know. I hear that so much, but
how do you respond to that?
Well, it usually takes one person to shift a relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes both people are willing to get help, but it usually takes somebody to see the benefit to go, huh?
Oh, see the benefit.
Yeah, because if I'm starting now to communicate from my point of view, and I'm not blaming you, and I'm inviting you to hear what I'm feeling, then you're going to suddenly start realizing, hey, we're actually having better communication and we're not arguing as much. Maybe I'm going to get on board with this. So what people don't realize is the person who starts is the person of power, and they are actually setting a positive example for the other one to hopefully follow. Now, it doesn't always happen, but you are gently inviting them to meet you there versus you need to do this class, you need to get therapy. Again, that's a you. So most people are going to go, I don't need help. You're the one who needs help. You're the one with the problem. And then you're off and running.
Right. Yeah. Then it's going in circles again.
Right.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I have so many thoughts running through my head at this moment. This is so important because, and when you said stay focused on the benefit, at the end of the day, I remember early in relationship with my husband, I had a sponsor who I would go to her with stuff and she would be like, this is so painful because we perceive separation. And there's so much pain and separation because really we love each other and our souls, she was like, our souls want to be together, right? We want to have that connection, right? And resentment is like a wedge. And until we can learn a process to resolve the resentment, it's difficult to feel connected to somebody if there's like that anger there. And I feel like, a lot of times when people think about boundaries, they think about teaching people how to treat them, which I think is actually true. But having self boundaries, meaning like I need to stay focused on the benefit. If I can do my self-care and stay connected to self, then I'll be able to better tell somebody what it is that I need and what I want. And I'll also be more sensitive to their needs and wants. I mean, this isn't just like a one-way street, right? And so boundaries always also work towards me in the sense that I have a boundary with myself that I'm not going to use those you words. Because if I resort back to my old ways of communication, I'm going to pay the price in terms of continued discord and feeling disconnected. So I have to stay focused, like you said, stay focused on the benefit. It's like, what do I really want? I want a peaceful and loving relationship. I want to feel connected.
Right.
Because there's so much joy in that space.
Right.
So I have to give up my old coping skills.
Yeah. And it is hard to be the one doing the work. I can't deny that. I mean, I think there is a natural resentment that can come up when one person is getting help and the other person doesn't want help. So I really want to validate that because that's not easy.
Yeah, no, that you're right. It is important to validate that. And I find that validation is often it's like Brene Brown. Do you know who she is? The gifts of imperfection. She said empathy is the antidote to shame. And I think a lot of what we're talking about in relationship is like, if someone's attacking me and I'm super defensive, it's because I feel super guilty.
Right.
I feel guilty and wrong I may not even be in touch with it, because when I'm in crisis mode, I'm disassociated and detached. So I'm not even aware about how, but I just know from experience that when I'm super defensive, it's because I feel really guilty and I'm trying to protect what little esteem I have. Yeah. So this is not easy. And I love that you validate first and then we can move to solution.
Right. No, it's really, this takes a lot of work for sure.
It does.
You know,
how would you feel about if someone comes to you and they are triggered? Is there a way to diffuse that with statements like validation statements, like, oh, I could see how you'd feel that way? Like if you're whoever's saner in the moment can diffuse the situation just by using validation. Is that true?
It can. It depends on how triggered they are, because if they're on the 8, 9, 10 scale of rage, then they cannot listen at that point. When we're triggered, really the best course of action to me is to remove yourself, because you're most likely too hot to be able to hear correctly, because that fight or flight stuff's going on. And I'm much more likely to misread what you're going to tell me or make a negative assumption about what you're saying, because I'm already triggered. I'm already 3/4 of the way there. So, for me, it really depends. I think validation is a great tool. And to say something like, I understand why you're really upset. This has happened several times. This has been a really painful issue for you in our relationship. I think that can go a long way. It just depends if they're over that hump where they can't come back because they're just too intense. They're not going to necessarily hear that.
Okay. So it depends on how triggered they are. If they're at a 8 or above, the best, if you're noticing whoever's saner at the moment, maybe have the discussion when things are calm. It's like, let's set some, do you do discussions in relationships around setting ground rules for discussion, like difficult discussion?
Yeah, for sure. One of the things the Gottman Institute always talks about is giving your partner a heads up on the topic. Can we talk about what happened last night? You don't want to say, hey, I want to talk to you, and then launch into this really hot topic, because they're not agreeing to it. They may not be prepared. They may not be up for it. And so it's going to start the ball rolling in the wrong direction. So giving them a heads up first and say, hey, are you willing to talk about what happened last night? Is now a good time? If they say yes, awesome. But so much of the time, I've been guilty of this too, where we force the conversation because we're dying to resolve the issue, but we're not resolving the issue when we're forcing the conversation to happen.
How do we take care of ourselves when we're sitting on something that hot? Like, it's like, we're so uncomfortable. It's like, we're so uncomfortable. Like there's an exchange, there's an explosion, there's separation. And when things are calmer, it's like the, desperate need to make amends or get reconnected, or like, cause separation for people that with codependency is like, it's like death.
Right.
Terrible.
Well, that's where your tools come in. That's where support comes in. That may be the great time to call your friend and go, hey, do you have a minute? I really need to talk something out, because I can't talk to my partner, but I need to just blurb, can I just blab for 5 minutes or 10 minutes? Or writing. I love writing at that point, because I can do the uncensored version on paper and not hurt anyone.
Don't hurt anybody. I like that, because it's so easy just to be like, man, that unfiltered rage. It's like, we really need to, when we're that hot, we're that triggered. It's so important to filter that or process with somebody else.
The only caveat to that is I tell them, try to avoid swearing, because that's going to escalate the anger, especially verbally.
Oh my God, I'm so guilty of that.
Oh, I am too. But
breaking things, I like to break things. It's been a minute, but I used to huck shit at the wall.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people have that. I'm
Mexican.
Common.
I can't help it.
But not swearing is it is actually, throwing things is really common.
Okay.
But
I don't do it anymore. Just FYI.
yeah, well, I know, because you've been in
I'm
long-term
healed.
recovery and you've done the work.
Yes.
But I do think that not swearing is that one stopgap that people will notice a difference from, because you
Okay, no
can't
swearing.
get rage. You can't get as hot. If I say fudge, I kind of laugh like, oh, this is stupid, but that calms me down. But if I let myself rip and
Yeah.
just F-bomb it, I'm more intense than when I started. So if they can make that one tweak, it can really help us have some semblance of control, because we're not letting ourselves get out of control to that level.
Yeah, that's emotion management, right? Not letting
Yep.
yourself get out of words are powerful. Words are so
Yeah.
powerful. They really do.
It is. And we can vent without swearing. You can still say hateful things, you know, but the goal is to get all that out where nobody hears it. And then eventually you're going to hear that what you're saying and go, okay, Michelle, this is not true. I don't hate my husband.
Right.
I need to take a walk. I need to, you know, do some self-care, because eventually you're going to hear yourself talking, and hopefully it's going to wake you up. If not, that's when you absolutely need to call a sponsor or someone that you trust and go, hey, I need help getting out of this because I'm in a really bad mindset.
I had a sponsor who would listen. I would call her. This is early in recovery, probably the first couple of years. I would call her and be like, "Bob did this, Bob did that." Blah, blah, blah. She'd be like, "Okay, well, I won't sponsor him."
Oh,
I'd be like, "Oh, you're
great
such a bitch."
Oh, wow.
And I would be like, "Whoa, okay."
I love that though. That's like, I mean, that's
like,
kind of a slap, but
yeah, it got my attention.
Yeah.
27 years later, I'm still talking about that shit because it got my attention. And I was like,
yeah,
because what she was saying is, okay, we're going to focus on your part, right? Because that's all I had. That's, let's go back to what you can control.
Right.
Right. It's like, what was your part in this?
Yep.
And and I trusted her because I knew she really had, I
had
a good sponsor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I had a good sponsor, and I knew she cared about me, and she created enough safe space for me that she could. I have a friend, Gina, who calls that spiritual rudeness. Isn't that funny?
That is.
I thought that was so cute. But what it is, it's like that honesty. It's like the truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off. Yeah. And that's how you know you're getting to the truth. But it was so important for me to have somebody like my sponsor, Julie, who would be like, okay, well, let's focus on your decisions. Like, what was your thinking? What was your part in this? What did you say? What were your motives? Right. Just getting down to what was really underneath all that anger. And for me, I learned I didn't know how to talk about my sadness. I would just go straight to rage. And so that was really helpful to have a sponsor that I could talk to. And then when she and I sort of talked it all out and processed it, then I got to what was underneath. And that's what I brought to my husband.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, that's what I brought to him. I would be like, oh, it's like I could see how I provoked him, or my motives were selfish or self-centered, and I was trying to get him to meet my needs when it was my responsibility to meet my needs. And then once, like, she would talk to me until I got to a place of empathy for him.
Oh,
isn't that amazing?
What a wonderful sponsor.
Yeah, she was gold. Yeah.
Oh man.
She's still sponsor 35 years into her recovery journey.
That's
cool. But
cool.
she's someone who did her own work. So she, and so you're right. Like you said, she had what I wanted. So I was lucky in that regard. But yeah, that's why we don't do this stuff alone, right? It's important to.
No. Yeah. And whenever you're looking for a professional, do look for someone who does their own work. I don't care for people who lecture, but they don't follow up their words with doing it themselves.
It's tough to discern that, though, don't you think?
It can be, but I think it's a valid question when you're interviewing a recovery coach or a therapist to say, what's your take on doing this work personally? And if they
Ooh,
say,
just ask them directly.
why not?
Yes, it never occurred to me.
Do you believe in this work personally? And if they hem and haw, they don't.
Yeah. Also, I was just interviewing this other gal who spent 4 years with a counselor or a therapist, or I'm not clear on their qualifications, but she talked about her drinking for 4 years, and they never once suggested that she try to moderate or quit or go get help. And so my feeling is that if you have any questions about your drinking, or, like we're talking about relationships, it's through the lens of recovery, right? Like people that are in 12-step programs or in recovery.
Right.
To find somebody who is trained in
addiction.
Yeah,
for sure.
And there's like doctors that are board certified in addiction now. But we have to ask. You're right. Ask, what is your training, and do you do your own work?
Yeah. Because I think that to me is where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, I've been around a long time like you, and I can sniff that shit out in 2 seconds.
Yeah, I know you can.
Yeah. I was like, off. Like, I don't know. It's just something, and I don't even know what it is all the time, but it's the way people phrase things. Like, I went to a psychiatrist's office once, and I had the first visit. It was like an intake visit with this gal. And she wanted to know, and like, I'm 25 plus years into recovery, and she wanted to know about my addiction. And I was like, I'm not there anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not struggling. And she was like, oh, but tell me, did you have any bad trips? And I was like, who says that?
Oh, wow.
Like zero. I was like, I'm not talking to you.
Yeah. She's obviously not a good match.
Yeah. I was like, next. But yeah, it takes time, because typically when we're ready to reach out to somebody, it's because we're in crisis. So, but actually, back to the tools: boundaries, communication, and managing emotions. The three pillars.
Should I share my questions?
Yeah.
Okay. So when I did this workshop, in each area, if your listeners want questions, here's 3 of them. One is, what do you want to stop doing in terms of boundaries? Okay. Like saying yes when you mean no, stuffing your feelings, putting up with unacceptable behavior. What do you want to start doing? So what are some baby steps for setting boundaries? And then what do you want to continue doing? And the continue doing is, what are you doing right now that you feel good about? Because, we have to look at what we're doing well too. Recovery isn't just about beating ourselves up or saying, oh my gosh, I'm not doing this, this, and this. It's also acknowledging what we are doing well. So those 3 questions, if you can ask yourselves that in each pillar area, then you're going to be able to understand a little bit more where your next steps are.
So is that a writing, like a journaling exercise?
Yeah. I would definitely journal it. And then you can do it for managing your emotions, do it for communication, because that's going to show you where you're at and where you want to go.
Oh my gosh, that is so important, right? Because I feel like half the time, like, nobody is really taught how to have healthy relationships. We're all just kind of winging it. Yeah. And we fall to there's this, actually, the military special forces, there's this guy, his name is Jocko Willink. He's a Navy SEAL, and he wrote this book called Extreme Ownership, something like that. And they talk about how in crisis situations, we fall to the level of our training. We don't rise to the level of our expectations. Right. Yeah. And this exercise is clarity. Yes. It provides clarity on what exactly to do and not do. And it gives you a target. You have to, this is like the training part. You need clarity, and so that you default to your training in a moment of crisis. It's like, wait a minute, what do I want to stop doing? What do I want to start doing?
Because the stop is probably the easiest one to pick, because we all know where we could improve.
Like swearing or saying you statements.
Absolutely. Or not setting boundaries and just squirming and resenting it.
Stuffing your feelings or saying too much. That was at the in the beginning, we talked about being quiet. Was that to be quiet? Like, don't just spew unfiltered.
So that can be a boundary if like you're in a group setting and people are asking for a
Oh,
volunteer,
right. Okay.
or somebody's needing help. And instead of saying, absolutely, I can do that, take a breath.
How does that work in relationship? Because I can see like, I don't know, like managing like I know a lot of people fight over like what to do and what not to do as far as work distribution, let's say, like over the kids, who's going to do the pickup, who's going to do the drop off, who's going to, and when your partner says, hey, can you I'm going to be running late for work.
Right.
And it's like, you're busy. It's like, well, that was your commitment. It's like, gosh, I wish I could help you, but it's not my problem. I don't know. Do you know where I'm going with that?
Yeah, no, the silent one is probably best done in group settings where, this is the codependent who overly helps out.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, if you're asked specifically one-on-one, then you're going to need to respond. But even saying something like, can I get back to you? Because in the moment, we can so easily say yes and mean no. So if you can say, hey, can I call you right back? I just gotta do something and I'll be right back. Because then you can go, okay, do I really want to do this? How do I want to handle this? Because setting a boundary in the heat of the moment when you're being asked is not easy. I would give yourself that time gap if you can.
Yeah, because I'm thinking I had a client that it was like a reoccurring issue. It's like, who's going to do what as far as picking up, dropping off, taking the child to an after school activity. And it was always like a tug of war, and that was like a reoccurring source. And so if somebody has committed, and maybe this is a bad example of the be quiet, but in Al-Anon, they say, is it like they say be quiet because is it necessary? Is it kind? You probably know this better than I do. Is it necessary? Is it kind?
Yeah. Well, sometimes silence is letting the other person experience their consequences.
Oh, very good.
Without getting in the way. But the other thing, I love your example about the chores and the carpooling thing. Because sometimes we can think, okay, our spouse is our only solution. So we end up fighting over this rather than, well, what if our partner really says, sorry, I can't do it anymore. I'm not willing, or whatever reason they're giving. If we think they're our only solution, we're trapped. But if we can say, well, wait a minute, I can hire somebody to do this. I can ask my neighbor to do this. Then you start to feel empowered because you realize that you can get your need met in a healthy way versus, oh my God, he's my only answer, or she's my only answer.
Right. I love that. I love that thinking outside the box, because if we do feel trapped, then it becomes a huge source of resentment. And
absolutely.
It's like, you're never there for me when I need you, and you're the dad. People lose their damn minds.
I suggested to someone just a few weeks ago to get a bookkeeper because a couple was arguing about money and who was handling the finances. And I said, I have a bookkeeper and she's really reasonable. Have you thought of getting one? And they're like, oh my God, yeah. I mean, sometimes we can hire this stuff out. Why fight about it for the next 20 years? If you can do that and find somebody to help with whatever, chore that is, and that's a feasible option for you, great.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Because hiring a bookkeeper is certainly cheaper than a divorce.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No kidding.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. Okay. So those are 3 great questions. I want to be mindful of your time. Is there anything else that you feel like is important to discuss, or any kind of like writing exercises, or what else?
I don't want people to feel overwhelmed. So if you're listening to this and you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I can't do all 3, just pick one. Pick the one that's hurting you the most or getting the most your attention, and start there. You don't have to do all 3 at once. Growth is a process. And I always go where my motivation is. If boundaries are calling me, I'm going to do that. If I don't want to deal with my emotions yet, I don't have to. I can go where I'm motivated, because to me, that's what recovery is about, is we do get to pick and choose where we want to focus our energy in our recovery.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because it all works together. So we're kind of doing all of it all at the same time,
Right.
but focus is about prioritizing and where am I, where's the point of the greatest returns, right? If I'm in crisis
Yeah.
and it's because I don't have boundaries, then that's a great place to start. Or
Mhm.
if I'm in crisis around communications, it's like I'm going to focus on just saying I statements.
Yep.
And
Yep.
yeah, I love that. Man, the managing emotions part. I have a daily practice of mostly daily. I almost lied. Almost a daily practice of meditation. And I feel
Mm,
like I heard this gal talking about, she's a weight loss expert. She said that meditation was her number one weight loss tool because you have high
wow.
levels of
Uh-huh.
cortisol, like that makes you gain weight. So,
Mm,
but I feel like meditation is sort of like it's a great tool. It's like a fix-all tool,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
Meditate when because it calms me down, it centers me, it
mhm.
helps me to remember
Yeah.
what's really important, it helps me to connect with self, and from that place, um, I tend to respond to everything else better. So that's like
Mhm.
my number one emotion management
Oh yeah, that's
tool.
big.
Yeah.
That's really big.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be a long time. I like to do a guided meditation by Tara Brach called the Rain Meditation, and it's free
Oh,
on YouTube, and it's 11 minutes and 31
oh,
seconds.
I'll have to check it out.
It's so good because it's RAIN stands for recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture. And
Mm,
so if I start my day and I just kind of scan and check in and recognize where I'm not feeling good or where I'm holding, and then just allow feelings to be, and then get curious and
mm,
investigate. And then once I kind of identify some things, then I can say what needs to be nurtured. And it's a way of sort of siphoning off that, the stress that, man, life is hard. There's a lot going on
yeah.
and life is hard. So that's my biggest emotion management
Oh,
tool
I
right
love
now.
that. No,
Is
I
that
think
good?
meditation is huge.
Yeah, that's very good. We may have to do another round of this if you feel like there's
Yeah.
more, but I'll probably break this up into a couple of mini episodes so people can digest. But I think this is a conversation that people can come back to because you've mentioned so many great tools.
Oh, this has been so fun. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course, when you can come on whenever you want to. Where can people find you and get a hold of you if they want to work with you one on one?
So my website is counselingrecovery.com, and I have a YouTube channel under my name, Michelle Farris, relationship therapist. So I have lots of free content there too.
Yes, you have I love that YouTube channel. I was watching that the other day when we were about to have a conversation, and I was like, I'm gonna have to ask her about all this stuff.
That's great.
So, Michelle, thank you so much for your time. I can't wait to have another conversation with you about all this stuff.
Yes, this is going to be great.
Yay. Okay, we'll talk soon.
Bye.